My wedding photos were the single most traumatic experience in my entire life.
Come sta andando?
I'm wedding dress shopping. Maybe it wasn't the single most traumatic experience, but it's definitely up there with the top 3 because it's like, why has a year passed and I'm still salty? I still feel upset. People build up your wedding to be this huge thing. You only get married once, you only have one wedding. And after the day is over, all you have is your photo and video to remember the day. And if you don't like them, it's heavy. I spend a lot of time, more time than I probably should, in the bridal forums and on Reddit. And from my own personal scientific observation, more than half of us don't like our photos. A lot of women don't like their wedding photos, and we don't talk about how to deal with that. So in this video, I want to talk a bit about my story. I want to finally, try to lay this topic to rest in my head, give you some tips with regards to how to avoid hating your wedding photos. I work with my image. I've worked with my image for years. And outside of being like in front of the camera and a talent, I'm also essentially a producer. I produce visual content. I produce ads for other brands and for my own. I work with the image. I work very closely with videographers and photographers every day as a job, and I have for years. I knew from the very beginning that photo and video were going to be the top vendors for me. They were going to be the most important ones. But the problem was, as I said, I was getting married in Jamaica. I knew nothing about photographers there or, the method of sourcing them. So I didn't think too much to leave it to my wedding planner. I gave her my budget, I gave her my mood board, and based on these two things, she gave me a list of vendors for each category. For photos specifically, she gave me 2 options. One was a more high-end option, and they were an actual photo team. They looked very established, but the thing is, one, I didn't like their style of photos. I felt like their style of photo was very dramatic, and for me, it was just giving kind of dated. And 2, I didn't see any dark-skinned black brides on their Instagram or in their portfolio at all. This was a problem that I didn't think that I would have getting married in Jamaica. But if you know Jamaica, this is actually not that surprising. Given that I work with photographers every day, I know that this is an issue, people being able to photograph and post-produce dark skin, so I excluded them. The other person was a young girl. She was working by herself, and at least she did seem to be able to edit skin. With regards to her style, it was very simple, but my mentality at the time was I can work with her. I felt that I would be able to, just speak to her as a person and be like, yeah, this is what I want, and let's see if we can get your vision and my vision to meet someplace in the middle. I booked her, we had our first initial meetings, I really liked her, and everything was mostly great. Remember I said I started planning my wedding about a year and a half before my actual wedding, so I picked these vendors a year and a half before my wedding. So what ended up changing in my case is, 1, I was working and saving, and I now had a bit more budget to spend on my wedding. Not a lot, but I could spare an extra 1,000 euros or 2. Furthermore, my style, my eye, and everything that I was seeing with regards to wedding world was kind of changing and developing more. So the things that I want and I thought were kind of like acceptable before weren't necessarily things that I wanted to settle for now that I was already spending as much as I was spending on my wedding. Third thing, my photographer had stopped updating her portfolio. Another thing that I thought of in the beginning was we also have a year and a half. She's younger. I'm sure that she'll get better in a year and a half. I don't know why this was my thought process, but I figured that, there would be some growth with her portfolio within the next year. And not long after I booked her, she had just stopped posting completely. She's still responding to me in terms of like my wedding, but she's not posting her work anymore. And my budget has changed, and I'm now seeing that there were like other photography options in Jamaica outside of the 2 that my wedding planner had suggested to me. One day I randomly come across this other photographer, and I was just blown away by his work. Blown away so much so that I didn't look to see if there were dark-skinned women on his page. And I would find out later that there weren't, and this is obviously going to develop into a problem. I saw that the 2 photographers, my photographer and this photographer, followed each other, they've worked together, and so I ended up being able to work out a deal where I would have him as my photographer, her as the second shooter, and he would be doing the edits for just €1,000 more, which, you know, all of this worked for me. I now had 2 photographers instead of 1. I was really in love with his style. I also really liked her style. Like, I thought that I had photo on lock. There were a few small things with regards to his professionalism leading up to the wedding that I just decided to ignore because, again, I repeat, I work with creatives a lot. At least in my experience, some of the best creatives that come up with the best work aren't necessarily the most structured or organized people. I even took like these little unprofessional things that I saw him do as, well, he's just a creative. So the day of my wedding comes, I'm dead tired. So I don't even get to do the usual micromanagement that I would usually do with a photographer. Also learned this from my wedding to always do this now, is I will ask to see the photos. I will ask to see the photos so I can see how I'm posing, I can see how you're setting up the photo, and I will adjust based on that. But on the day of my wedding, I was so exhausted and so overstimulated that I didn't think to do that. On my day of my wedding, whether I had a choice or not, decided to just let everybody else do their jobs that I was paying everybody to do. In that vein, we go through the wedding. Thankfully, my wedding was amazing. I had a wonderful time. When I looked back at my wedding the day after the wedding, I was really satisfied. I said that could not have gone better than it did. And all the little things that didn't go exactly as planned, they ended up being funny stories, and I was happy with my wedding. After 2 years of wedding planning hell, I was actually happy with my wedding. Everything was great. Then we get to the 10 days after the wedding, finishing up the honeymoon, and we get our photo previews. And you guys, that's where the hell just starts. I'm gonna have a bit different eye for myself with respect to an additional person. So for example, when I showed my mom the photos, when I showed his mom the photos, everybody was like, oh, but what are you saying? These photos are beautiful. But let me tell you guys the technical issues with these photos that go outside of the fact that I don't think these photos are flattering of me. First of all, the colors. I don't know why, given his portfolio, the colors that were chosen for my photos were very dark and cold. The day that I got married was not dark or cold. Nothing on his portfolio was dark or cold. And I don't know what off of my essence or mood board gave dark and cold, but he chose these very dark, cold tones to color my photos with, which I didn't like. Second thing was the fact that I felt like all the photos that were of just me, you can't really see me. There's awkward poses, I'm always looking down, I'm never looking at the camera. They just look unflattering. Mix that together with the colors, I look ashy. There's all of these issues with my photos alone. And then the only good photos are me with my husband, and in those photos, he is the star of the photo. I was like, wait a second. I know my husband is photogenic. My husband is a very attractive man, but I'm the bride. Up until now, I had been very hands-off with all of my vendors. I don't know, maybe it was because I was doing other things with my work, but I just didn't have the energy or the desire to do that. I left everybody to do what they wanted to do, and I was also very accommodating and open to hearing how they wanted to do their work. And with every other vendor, that was fine and that worked. But with photo, on that day, when I saw that preview, I don't know, something clicked in me. I was like, the wedding is over and this is it. This is the finish line right here. This cannot be. So I had written him an email at first saying, let's set up a call. But then I wrote him another email. I was like, actually, I don't have time for another call. I don't have any more time to dedicate to this wedding. Here is everything that's wrong with these photos, and I need them fixed. I wasn't asking him about how I looked in the photos. I'm saying these technical issues, these colors are off, this light is off, this photo is overexposed. Why is there this angle look? He responded, he said he heard what I was saying, and that given that he was going to adjust the photos, and the previews were just for this, to get on the same page. And I was like, okay, great. But the issue is, by then, I don't know, there was something already mentally in me that had been faltered, and I couldn't trust him anymore, because it wasn't even just the technical aspects of, well, this photo looks overexposed and these colors are weird, but even the choice of photos that were picked. I was like, of all the photos of me getting ready, is this the best one? Actually, Guy, I'm gonna need to select the photos. I'm gonna need you to send me all of the low quality photos. I need to see all of them and I wanna pick. He agreed to do that, which did take time because it does take time to upload so many photos. And then I took time to select the photos. And one thing that I should add with working with photos is half of the time is going to be spent picking the photos. It takes a lot to go through thousands of photos and pick the 500 best ones, and then there's going to be a million photos that are basically the same. And so a lot of time goes into selecting those photos. I took, I think, a week to select all of the photos out of my own time that I was technically paying him to do. But it was fine because at least this way, I got photos that I liked. And seeing the full photos, it confirmed some things. It confirmed the fact that there were better photos of me in this instance. So I don't know why you picked these ones. Specifically my portraits, the portraits of just me in my white dress, I didn't like them. Another issue was also that he didn't get the first kiss specifically. Thank God there was also the girl. Actually, if it wasn't for the girl, I would have hated my photos completely. Any nice photos of me were taken by the girl, which is insane to me. Thank God she was there, but like the portraits that he was supposed to be in the lead of, nothing. No photos in my white dress that I liked. There was one photo that I liked. No photos of our first kiss, which we kissed 3 times. Out of the 3 times, the second shooter got one of the kisses. And yeah, there were just a bunch of really strange photo choices, but I said, you know what? It's fine. There are still some photos where I look nice, and overall the photos of everybody else looked great. The candids of my guests, all the photos of my husband, those looked really nice. It was literally the photos of me and our portraits that weren't good. I picked the photos, then things get worse. The contract said I would have my photos in 3 months. So we now get to 3 months and he's late. And I'm like, why are you late? Because I literally took the time to pick the photos for you. So that took a lot off of your plate. Literally sent you examples of your own work that I wanted my photos to look like. And somehow you're still late. So then this whole back and forth ensues. What I think actually happened is, again, creative people. I think he mismanaged his work, forgot about me. And overall, he just basically underestimated, for some reason, how much attention to detail I would pay to these things. Because all of these things from, like I said, the little unprofessional things leading up to the wedding, the fact that you just picked a random filter and slammed it onto all of my photos, a random filter that wasn't adapted to my skin. I think that filter, it looked good on my husband. So I know that was one of those cookie cutter filters that was made on a default person, probably a default white person, and he just pasted them onto my photos. You picked a random selection of photos without actually thinking about them, and then you sent them to me. And now you've even forgot the deadline and you're late. And from there, like, our communications pretty much break down. We get all the way to March where he still has not sent me my photos. I got married in November. They were due in February. He still has not sent me my photos. So I now have to start threatening people with legal action. Threaten. And I'm finally able to get most of my photos. But there were still some issues with overexposure, which again, insane to me. Had to go back and forth through April for him to give me those. And by May, I finally had all of my photos at least decently shot. The craziest thing was that it wasn't the legal action that I threatened him with to get my photos finally. The craziest thing is that I had to threaten him saying that if I don't get my photos, I'm going to make a TikTok about how my colorist Jamaican photographer ruined my wedding, and I'm going to post it. And that is actually what made him give me my photos, which is crazy because that shouldn't happen, you guys. I shouldn't have to threaten somebody with going on social media and talking about you for you to give me my photos that you are contractually obliged to give me. Long story short, that happened. And it just left a really bad taste in my mouth because, as I said, my photos overall are good. Everybody else looks great in my photos, but those memories that I really wanted to have of myself, me in my wedding dress. Even in telling the story, I'm just exhausted. It was 6 months of stress, 6 months of thinking, wow, I really spent all this money on this wedding, on this day that everybody says is supposed to be a pinnacle of your lifetime. And now I don't even have photos that I like from it. By the time May comes and I finally, after threatening him, get my photos, I'm more or less happy. I start working on the album, but then I decided that no, I'm gonna redo them. On a scale of 1 to redo your wedding photos, how insane are you? Me and my husband were both supposed to be going to Nigeria in October, and my mom was also supposed to be coming to Nigeria. I had left my wedding dresses, my white wedding dress and my Nigerian wedding dress in Jamaica with my mom. So I just said, you know what? She's gonna bring the dresses, and me and my husband are going to redo our portraits. And I am going to get my wedding portraits, specifically of me, that I wanted. I'm not compromising on that one. We did it. I did it all again. And this is how those photos came out, and this is how they look. And though I'm very tired, I'm finally happy. I'm finally happy with my photos because this is how they were supposed to look from the very beginning. Tips that I learned from my whole wedding photo experience. First of all, do your research. Even if you're having a destination wedding or you're getting married in a place that you're not familiar with, I would leave for your most important vendors, pick them yourself. Like, yes, your wedding planner can help you find them. They can help you narrow them down. They can add to your suggestion pool. But I think it's really important for you to get a deep look at what is out there and pick that person yourself. Don't make compromises. Don't make assumptions. Really research your vendor. Second of all, really pay attention to the style, because one thing photographers I've noticed, they love to say that when you're not happy with their photos, a lot of them will try to come and say that, well, you picked me and you don't like my style. That kind of argument wouldn't even have made sense with me, because when I would tell them what I don't like about my photos, I would take another one of their photos that I like and I say, I want my photo to look like this. Make my photo look like this. Did you not take this same photo in this same location with these same weather conditions? Why does this photo look like this? And why does my photo look like this? So pay attention to photographer styles and definitely pick a photographer where you say, I want to look like that. I want my picture to look exactly like that. Make sure there's a lot of communication. I gave my photographers a mood board. I gave my photographer a Pinterest board with actual photos that I wanted to copy. I gave my photographers an actual shot list where it was written out all the photos that I wanted. And it's funny because my photographer was like, oh, well, these are the standard photos. Don't worry, we got this, just for him to then miss photos. Make a shot list, make a mood board, make a Pinterest board. Say, I want this. Show them exactly what you want. On the day of the wedding, check your photos. At the end of the day, they can't say, no, I'm not gonna show you your photos. Check your photos to make sure that if you're posing awkwardly or you already don't like how you look, you can fix that right then and there. If I saw that the photos were overexposed, I would have told them to lower the exposure. But it's also true that that could be their style, that could be their way of editing, but just say okay, that's your style and your form of editing, but I've seen in your other photos that there was sky. You have sky in your photos, I want sky in my photos. Whatever you need to set the exposure to be for that to happen, that's what I want. Make sure that you're very vocal even on the day. I'm not saying micromanage your photos because you shouldn't have to spend all this time doing your photos on your wedding day, but be involved. I do wish that I was more involved the day of my wedding. Do your wedding portraits before your wedding. The day before, the week before, or honestly, even after is fine. In the end, it was fine for me to do them after. I found a place that was similar. I found a photographer that had a similar style. And so even doing them a year after, you can't really tell that they weren't taken at the same time. You'd have to really look at the details. You will take off so much pressure off of you and the photographer that day if you have your important portraits done before or after, because on the day of the wedding, you are so crunched for time and the pressure is so high that it's highly likely that things are gonna get missed and you're not gonna be satisfied with your wedding photos. And that feeling stays with you. If you don't like your photos, specifically your portraits, don't be afraid to redo them. In the days after my wedding, when I saw the wedding preview specifically, I was like, I want to redo this. I specifically said I wanted to redo my traditional outfit photos. And my mom and my husband were like, no, basta. Stop, you're crazy. That's even why I left my wedding dresses in Jamaica, to prevent myself from redoing the photos. But then it was eating me alive. In the end, I had to get my dresses anyways, bring my dresses from Jamaica to Nigeria. But can I tell you, I don't regret it? Can I tell you that I'm so happy that I did that? 10/10 recommend. I feel I feel so much better now. I actually feel like the photos make sense now, and I'm happy. If you ask me about the photo situation of my wedding, now I'm happy. Don't let anyone trick you into thinking that you're crazy. Redo your photos. What do you guys think? Do you have any advice for future brides with regards to their photos, how to get better photos, how to be happy with your photos? Be sure to leave a comment in the comment section, and don't forget to tune in to our next episode. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, I'll see you in my next one. Mwah.